Do you want Sessions to come back to the Senate Judiciary?
Absolutely. That's what he needs to do.
Are the Republicans, do they agree with you?
I think the Chairman Grassley does want him to come back.
It appears the Senate would like to have another word with Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, following reports that the Russian ambassador said he spoke about campaign-related matters with Sessions, which contradicts Sessions' previous testimony. And joining me now are MSNBC senior politics editor Beth Fooey, Evan Siegfried, Republican strategist and author of GOP GPS, How to Find the Millennials and Urban Voters the Republican Party Needs to Survive, MSNBC political analyst Joan Walsh, and MSNBC political contributor Jason Johnson. Thank you all for being here. So, Beth, I'll start with you. This question of the Judiciary Committee. Now, we know that Al Franken was the person that Jeff Sessions was talking to when he answered misleadingly, according to Al Franken, about whether he talked to any Russians about the Trump campaign. How likely is it that you think that we'll actually see a second round with Sessions?
I mean, it makes perfect sense, of course, that the committee's going to want him back. He's in a very, very perilous position, as we know.
Yes.
He's lost the confidence of the president.
Right.
That story was just devastating, that he had met or potentially met with Kislyak to discuss campaign-related issues. He's got a legal problem on his own hands at this point. He's going to navigate that. But certainly, if he wants to come clean and if he wants to reestablish his reputation, perhaps he should. We've got the other two testifying this week behind closed doors.
Yep. Kushner and Manafort.
Kushner and Manafort. So perhaps he can arrange a similar setup and get up there and tell them what he knows. But he's in a very bad position, and it strikes me that he's basically on final days there. How does he stay in his job?
An extraordinary position, Evan, for an attorney general to be in, facing, as Beth said, his own legal jeopardy, having basically done the same thing that Michael Flynn did and got fired for, which is allegedly is not telling the truth about who he spoke with. But this question of whether or not he is actually on last legs as the Attorney General, what are you hearing?
Well, I think that conservatives, forgetting all the stories that we've seen this week about his conversations with Ambassador Kislyak, conservatives are very upset with him over the civil asset forfeiture decree that he put out, which is an unconstitutional, illegal stripping of somebody of property without due process.
Just that they've been accused of a crime.
Yes.
Right.
And even Clarence Thomas has said that that is something that disproportionately impacts the lowest people on the economic spectrum, as well as minorities. And
even
he's
Clarence
come out
Thomas
against it. Even
that?
Clarence Thomas is against it.
Yeah.
RSI, the think tank, has actually highlighted this, and they've been superb on it. But Jeff Sessions doesn't have a friend in Washington right now. I think his shifting explanations since January over what his contacts with Russians were, no contacts whatsoever. Oh, it was a handshake and an overall thing. Well, we didn't talk about campaign-related topics.
Yeah.
And clearly the president doesn't have confidence in him. He would love to see him go, because the president's shifting expertise on recusal is amazing, especially when the president said that Judge Curiel should recuse himself simply because he's, quote, a Mexican.
Right.
But Jeff Sessions shouldn't have recused himself simply because he took that loyalty oath, I guess.
Yeah, well, Mexicans no, Russians yes, apparently, in this administration. But, Joan, it is very interesting that Jeff Sessions is not reading the room. It is quite clear from that New York Times interview that Donald Trump would like him very much to go. But he seems to be hanging on, and my guess would be that his ideological reasons, one asset forfeiture, wanting to do the things he's doing on immigration, wanting to complete his sort of dream of driving down non-white immigration. Yeah, going after voters. These are things he's wanted to do his whole life. He was a backbencher. He's not willing to go. How do you think this winds up, and how does this end up?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's very likely that the president does wind up firing him because he doesn't have any friends in Washington. But then that sets up another crisis.
Yes.
Because how do you confirm another attorney general in this climate? And as critical as I've been of Republicans for their lack of action, I think it would be very difficult for them to vote for somebody who was clearly not going to fire Robert Mueller. Who, the candidates who would be widely acceptable, it seems to me, would be very few. And so I guess that gives the president some pause.
You're missing one key point on the firing of Mueller, or pardon me, not Mueller, but Sessions. The big theory that's been running around and has been publicly speculated is that this would allow Trump to put in a recess appointment attorney general who might fire Rosenstein over to get Mueller out.
Or Jason Johnson or Rosenstein, who has shown himself willing to play the lackey when asked. He did fire and write the memo that was the pretext for firing Jim Comey. So why wouldn't Rosenstein, if Sessions was out as acting attorney general, just fire him?
Well, yeah, this is one of those sort of end of democracy moments. I mean, if we're just absolutely candid about this. If the president of the United States fires his attorney general, sort of a reverse, Bloody Saturday or Bloody Sunday from the 1970s, and basically says, I'm going to fire every single person who's actually investigating me, and the Republicans in Congress do nothing about it, that's kind of it. We no longer have the rule of law in this country. We no longer have a president, and we have a ruling party that does not care about the law or any sort of investigation. That is the precipice that we're actually on here. This is bigger than Jeff Sessions and his engaging in sort of bigoted policies about voting and immigration. This is bigger than Donald Trump and his concerns and his vast insecurities about his likely guilty family. This is about the core of American democracy. Can we accept a president simply destroy any attempts to hold him in check in the law? And if that's what happens here, we're all in trouble.
And that is the question, Beth. Do you detect among Republicans any inclination to begin to reign in this White House, no matter what, even if Mueller were to be fired?
No, and that's the really scary thing, is when those stories first began to break, you saw almost radio silence from the Hill, from Republicans. I mean, when pressed, when asked, our Senate producer got a hold of Marco Rubio, and he said it wouldn't be a good thing, and we should let Mueller do his job. But that was only when pressed. They've basically been entirely silent on this issue. Chris Collins, a Republican who's a big Trump supporter, of course, in the House, not the Senate, but nonetheless said, I really think Mueller should stay away from Trump's financial dealings. So he's siding with the notion that Mueller's overstepping his skis. It's incredibly scary.
And so, Evan, what's going on? Where are the I've already said there are going to be no heroes, but where are they?
Well, not all heroes wear capes, but I think you have to realize what's going on within the Republican base as well. President Trump is above 80%, which is the magic mark for when Republicans turn on him. Republicans are privately saying we will hold him accountable if he were to cross that line of getting Mueller
just to
fired.
take their word for it.
I believe many of the people who have told me, because they've never given me cause to disbelieve them on anything.
Are any of them in leadership?
But I would say that they are close to leadership, yes.
Okay.
But what you're talking about is it's a gradual thing. There's a thing that Democrats misunderstand about Republicans. It's not a knee-jerk thing. We have to bring our base along. And you are seeing there are cracks within the base, and it does take time. It's glacial, yes, and it can be frustrating for Democrats. I know I'm going to be pilloried for saying this, but it will happen if Trump fires Mueller. If Mueller is gone, and it becomes a question of rule of law, and I think Republicans, especially in the Senate, will hold him accountable. As for the House, the Chris Collinses and the Ted Yohos who will defend Donald Trump punching their grandmother in the face, I don't know and see that.
Well, we shall see. Beth Fooey and Evan Siegfried, I like this panel. You guys all come back. Thank you guys both for being here. Joan and Jason are sticking around. And up next, a very special AM Joy look at Trump's never-ending war on the reality-based media. We'll be back.